Madam Acting President, in the previous fortnight, I introduced the Statutes Amendment Gambling Mandatory Pre-Commitment. Is that the one I'm doing, Chris? Yep. Yeah, Mandatory Pre-Commitment System Bill. There's three bills. Bill 2024. It is one of three bills that I introduced on the same day, and I intend to speak to today. This particular bill focuses on mandatory pre-commitment when it comes to poker machines. Australia has earned the unfortunate title of the world's biggest gamblers, and this isn't a crown we should wear proudly. Despite making up just 0.5% of the world's population, we account for 18% of the world's poker machines. Even more shocking, 76% of total numbers of poker machines that are not located in casinos are found right here in Australia. And this is no accident. Our gambling losses as a nation have tipped the $24 billion mark each year, with just over half of those losses coming from poker machines. And that is according to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. There are other reports that indicate that those figures, and these have been quoted only last month, are now as high as $32 billion. Australians are the world's biggest losers when it comes to gambling, and in short, it's our laws that are to blame. It is also no accident that Western Australia has the lowest per capita gambling losses in this country. And the obvious conclusion that you can reach in relation to that jurisdiction is because poker machines are confined to their casinos. This bill introduces a mandatory pre-commitment system, a restriction that caps the amount of money a person can spend on poker machines within a set period. It's actually completely in line with the regulation, the code that currently exists around pre-commitment, but in a voluntary form. It ensures players are able to set their limits before they start gambling, helping prevent runaway losses. A robust pre-commitment system will indeed prevent and reduce harm. There is no question about that. We know that gamblers often underestimate how much they're spending. They get caught up in the lights, in the sounds, in the atmosphere of a poker machine room, and of course in the false hope of winning back their losses. We know the tragic stories of people sitting at machines for hours and hours and hours on end, not wanting to move because they think that with the next $10 or $20 or $50 that they put in that machine, they will win back everything that they've lost during that sitting. They are the issues that this bill seeks to target. The machines we know are rigged for people to lose, and the addiction feeds on false promises. The bill itself is in line with proposals from New South Wales and Tasmania. Indeed, Tasmania is leading the way with its pre-commitment system set to take effect in December of 2025. And their system, which actually goes further than the one that I've proposed here today, requires players to register. It eliminates cash transactions for poker machines and introduces single-use cards that track playtime losses and even enforce mandatory breaks every 2 hours. The system will include 3 limits: maximum loss amounts, time played, and enforced breaks. Once those limits are reached, the machine will disable itself and notify the venue. Tasmania's default limits, and this is where that is at the most stringent end of pre-commitment, are set at $100 per day, $500 per month, or $5,000 per year. Players can choose to increase their limits, but only after a 24-hour cooling off period. The Tasmanian system, of course, is still in development, but it's clear they're taking meaningful steps to combat the harm caused by gambling addiction. It's worth noting also, before I get to New South Wales, that Victoria has implemented a partial pre-commitment system at Crown Casino following the recommendations of the 2021 Royal Commission. They've capped losses and linked the system to their loyalty program for Crown's 2,629 poker machines. By the end of the year, Victorians players will also have to comply with new regulations that further protect against gambling-related harm, including mandatory closing hours. And for the record, when you do visit that casino in Victoria, the only way you can gamble is by presenting to the concierge or the reception desk, effectively signing up to become a Crown member, which involves handing over identification, a driver's licence, answering some questions as to your identity, setting those limits. You might be encouraged to set them differently depending on how much, if you're not aware of how those limits apply. But effectively, you're told you can choose a limit to set. You can choose whether to set it weekly, daily, or monthly. You will be told that if you set a monthly limit of $5,000 and you lose that in today's sitting, then you won't be able to gamble at the casino again for the remainder of the month. This is what it takes to gamble on poker machines in Victoria today. There is no other way. There is no other way of accessing those products in that jurisdiction. And I also remind members in New South Wales, which this bill is based on, in that jurisdiction, this was an election commitment and one that was taken to an election and has been the subject now of implementation via a trial. Madam Acting President, nobody's saying that these schemes are easy to implement. And I know, and I expect when I hear from other members, they'll say, well, New South Wales hasn't worked. Tasmania has been delayed. But what we do know is that when you talk about voluntary pre-commitment versus mandatory pre-commitment, then yes, there are costs involved, and yes, it is more difficult to implement. We also don't have anywhere near the number of machines as New South Wales. They have something like 89,000 machines in that jurisdiction. So we don't have anything near the number of machines that they have also. It is easy to suggest that this would be too expensive to implement. But I remind the government, when they speak to this bill, that this is also a revenue stream that is bringing in close to $1 billion now each and every year in revenue, and that is increasing. Despite previous suggestions that those figures would be going down, we are now just shy of the $1 billion mark. Internationally, countries like Norway and Sweden have adopted pre-commitment systems, and the results speak for themselves. Losses have been dramatically reduced. In terms of the bill that I'm introducing, we propose a $20,000 cap per year. That can be subject to debate in this place, with the flexibility to set a lower limit through regulations. And this acknowledges the government's reliance on poker machine revenue, but also provides a starting point for meaningful reform. Madam Acting President, this isn't my first rodeo, and I'm fully aware of the reluctance of governments past, present and future to give up their addiction to gambling revenue. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the real cost of this dirty money that the government is so reliant on? And how many lives need to be destroyed before the government and the opposition and successive governments and oppositions in this state stop kowtowing to the poker machine lobby? We have to ask where our moral compass lies when it comes to the real cost of poker machines in this jurisdiction. The bill also mandates 2-minute breaks for every hour of play and requires every player to be registered before using a machine. Players must provide appropriate identification and nominate a bank account for deposits and withdrawals. And finally, it mandates that machines display responsible gambling messages and disable themselves once the player reaches their preset expenditure limits. The Alliance for Gambling Reform has pointed out that 63 cents of every dollar put into a poker machine comes from the pockets of someone addicted to gambling. They are not alone. This is not entertainment. It is addiction, plain and simple. They estimate that gambling contributes to about 20% of suicides in Australia. That statistic alone should horrify all of us. In 2022, 75% of Australians gambled, and recent analysis shows South Australians spend an average of over $1,550 per person, including children, per year on gambling. Statistics clearly show that these figures are, in fact, on the increase. And so I invite the government and indeed the opposition to take a long, hard look at the cost of this upfront sugar hit that they have become addicted to in terms of poker machine gambling revenue, $1 billion a year. Because if we are serious about tackling issues like family violence, domestic violence, suicide, poverty, cost of living crisis, then surely we have to acknowledge the social harms caused by gambling. I might seek leave to insert the rest of my speech without my reading it. How does that sound?
Is leave granted?
Although it's handwritten, I apologise, hands up.
Member to take the adjournment? Is that seconded? I'll put the question. All those in favour, against? Carried. Member adjourned.
Next Wednesday's sitting.
Oh, not on motion.
Oh, on motion.
No, hang on.
No.
You've inserted.
I'm
the rest
inserting
of
it,
our
so I don't
speech,
have to
which is
read
really
it.
against
Yeah.
what we're supposed to be doing.
Next Wednesday's sitting.
All right.